Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the School of Self-Worth. I'm your host, Nicole Song. So I love when I get to come in for these shorter mini episodes to do a quick dive on a topic that is close to my heart. And this topic is one I am super passionate about, and it is working less. And you're like, Nicole, please tell me more. But more specifically, I want to talk about how to have a 4-day work week. You heard me right, 4-day work week. Yes, I said it, working just 4 days. It's like, you might have thought, well, how the heck is that even possible? Like, I can't do that. My schedule doesn't allow for it. My life doesn't allow for it. Well, that's what we're going to get into today, because I see so many corporate leaders who believe they have to work 8, 10, 12-hour days plus nights and weekends, working during vacations to actually get their job done, to get recognized, and more specifically, to now break through the ceiling for the next level in their career. But I promise you, there is actually a new way to approach this. And that's what today's episode is all about. So before we begin, if you are an Asian American woman leader who wants the exact breakdown of a 4-day work week tailored to your life, DM me on Instagram at Nicole Song, and I have got something for you. Okay, friends, let's do this. Let's dig into this conversation. Okay, we are here to talk about the 4-day work week. So before I get into how exactly this is going to happen for you, I want to come into full transparency about how I work, the time I spend on my business and my life, and a little bit of my trajectory to get to this place where I feel so passionately about this. So I used to have a 40-hour-a-week job back when I was a journalist. Like, that was really standard. That was my norm. I definitely worked more sometimes, but I would say 45, 50 hours was max, like when I was really in an intense season at work. Then I went to work for myself. And that's when I turned into 60-hour weeks. Like, really, I was working for myself, and I was teaching 10 yoga classes per week. I was doing 20 hours a week for a yoga company as my part-time job. And I was also writing my fitness column. And let's not forget all of the driving I was doing to yoga studios for the fitness column. I was working nights, I was working weekends, pretty much everything you can think of in terms of consuming time. Like, that was all happening. By the way, by the end, I was exhausted. I was so burned out. I was so depleted. I didn't really have much time left for myself. I mean, I was teaching yoga classes and I didn't even have time to take yoga. I was really depleted. I didn't have time to see friends. I didn't have time to do weekends because I was always teaching and I was always working. So that was an experience for me that was not ideal. And that's when I started to look at my life and say, okay, how can I start to make some changes? How can I start to actually create a life that works for me in terms of the amount of time that I have? So now let's fast forward to my current life where I run a 6-figure business. I have a team. I have a lot of clients. I have a lot going on. And I only work 25 hours a week, maybe 30 if it's really busy, but I would say only 25 hours a week. And it would be an actual 4-day work week, except I don't like working more than 5 hours per day. But if I chose to just move it all into, 6.5 hours per day, I would actually have a 4-day work week as well. So I'm really looking at the big picture of time for all of you. Like, how can you actually cut back the hours? If you're working 8-hour days, how do we cut you back 20% to 6 hours per day? And then that could be, you could start to choose to really create that 4-day work week for yourself. So one of the things I've noticed for people is that when we're on this hamster wheel of, we think that the way we're going to make our lives better, whether it's getting a promotion or a raise or getting recognized at work, means that we're networking and we're working harder. And so what happens is, say that works for you, and for some of you that probably has worked, and you get to be successful from that. What it does is just creates this cycle of networking and working harder as the cycle. And I'm here to share with all of you that you can actually change the cycle with this new method of actually taking yourself down to a 4-day work week. And I promise you, this is actually the way that people start to have breakthroughs of recognition, promotion, unsolicited notes of appreciation from work, from your bosses. All of that starts to become possible when you really change this mental barrier you have about working less. So that's what we're going to get into. But first, my question for all of you is like, is this something that you want? If this is something that you want, then stay tuned and keep listening, because it is important to know and understand, do you want this? Do you want to work fewer hours? If you like working 60, 80 hours a week and you like working on vacations and going hard, and this is how you tell yourself you're going to retire early and all those things, go for it. Go for it. Be in that life. I'm cheering you on from the sidelines. And if you're somebody who's like, actually, Nicole, I would really rather not work so hard and still get the promotion and still get recognized at work and still be a leader, but I don't work so much and I have plenty of time for my family. I don't feel crazed all the time. I actually have space and freedom. Then keep listening, because this is what we're going to do. And really, we're going to start to get into like, how the heck do you do this? How do you run a life where you are actually only working 4 days a week, where you have space, you have time for you? And that's what we're going to get into. And it's actually so much simpler than you think it is. It really is. And that's why I wanted to break it down into four pieces for you today. And this is all part of the 4-day work week. Like, how do you start to really create that in your life? And if you know that you want it, this is the place for you. So let's dig in. Let's get into this. The first thing is the most crucial thing, and this is the most important thing. And the reason I shared my journey around how much I work is because I really had to break through this first one over and over again. And the big piece of this is around understanding how you identify in terms of the way that you work, your working style, the amount of time you work. So when you have the identity of somebody who works hard, someone who's a workhorse, somebody who works 40, 50, 60 hours, somebody who works to get it done no matter what, it will be almost impossible for you to make the shift to somebody who has a 4-day work week. You really have to start to understand how you think of yourself. If you think of yourself again as somebody who's just constantly going for it, gunning for it, and you don't take time for yourself, and you work weekends and you work on vacations, that's what's going to happen. You will continue to do that. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. And unless it's not what you want. If you want more space, if you want more time, that's the key. And then your key is to actually start to lean into that identity, test out the waters, see what it's like to be somebody who doesn't do X. It's very similar to anything we're doing when we're trying, like if you are wanting to work out more, we actually have to change our identity to be somebody who works out versus the identity of somebody who doesn't go to the gym. Like, I transformed my identity into a walker when I wanted to start getting 10,000 steps per day. I really had to think of myself as a walker. Previous to that, I wasn't somebody who walked that much. It wasn't a priority. I didn't really care. But once I shifted my identity into somebody who walks, I became someone who walks all the time. And I'm on like a 7 or 8 year streak now of 10,000 step days. So that's a big part of this. What's the identity you want to be? Do you want to be in the identity of someone who has a 4-day work week? You have to start to think of yourself that way, choose that way, and start to make decisions from that identity, because that is the only way to really get it grounded into the way you do life every single day. Okay, and then the second piece of this, so once you've got that identity shifted and you're like, all right, I feel pretty confident and clear that this is the identity that I want, and I'm going to do this consistently and regularly. Like, this is going to be how I operate. And you'll have to do it slowly over time, but really getting yourself into this new identity. The second piece, this one is really crucially important. And this is something I see as honestly the biggest mistake most people have around working less and understanding the relationship to it. And that is a relationship to time. The second thing you need to do is to have a new relationship to time. Now, you might be like, Nicole, what do you mean relationship to time? I have a calendar. I follow it. I have things to do. That's what's happening all day long. A lot of times people have the experience of their calendar controlling them. And so if you're in that experience of your calendar controlling you, that's the relationship that I am talking about. Because if you don't believe that you have a say over your calendar, you're going to have a very hard time shifting yourself into a 4-day work week. Here's what's happening also when we are looking at time and feeling like we don't have time. And if you're like, I say that all the time, I don't have time, you are in the right place, because we're going to talk about why we say things like that. When we say I don't have time, what's actually going on is you're letting yourself be in the circumstances of your life. We're all busy. We all have things to do. But when you really are not allowing yourself to believe you have the power to change your calendar, the power to say no, the power to actually create a calendar and craft one that works for you, what you're doing is you're actually handing your power away to calendar invites, to other people, to work, all of those things. And so when we say we don't have time, we actually are acting like we don't have power. And the other thing is, we're often just a little bit afraid of what might happen, because when you start to give time to something, let's go back to the workout example. If you say, okay, now I'm going to commit the time to working out, but then you do it and nothing happens, you don't get stronger, you don't look any different, you don't feel any different, then we're like, oh my gosh, that was such a waste of time. Can you see where I'm going here? That when we often are afraid that the change that we want or the life that we want is not going to happen if we actually put the time in. So then we're just like, I don't have time. I don't have time. I am the victim of time. I don't have any time to myself. Instead of understanding that when we put time in is actually how we start to have the change. So if you want to have more time with your kids, you have to dedicate the time to have time with your kids, because maybe you're like, oh my gosh, what if I spend time with my kids and this isn't fun? I don't want to spend more time with my kids. I like work because that's when I can escape. These are the things that can subconsciously be running through our minds. So our job is to start to understand the things that we might actually be afraid of. So that's a good place for you to investigate right now. What are you afraid of changing in your life if you actually put the time in to work less? What could happen, right? What could happen? What discovery might be on the other side of that? So look at the relationship to time. Be curious about the relationship to time. This is a really important thing that I work with on a lot with my clients, because when we are at the mercy of time, that's always an indicator to me that something else is going on. Okay, next, to have a 4-day work week, the third thing you have to know and look at is where you put work ahead of your life. So do you work to live, or do you live to work? So if you're working to live, if you're European, right, then you're actually working so that you can enjoy your life. You can have breaks, you can have weekends, your time with family, you're enjoying yourself. Or do you live to work? Like, work is the driving force in your life. And if you are putting work ahead of your own life, you're probably not going to want to have this 4-day work week, because you don't understand who you are outside of work. You are not clear on your identity. You're not clear on what is meaningful in your life. You feel like work is what gives you meaning. And sometimes we can get really afraid of that. And that's the reason we don't actually have a 4-day work week. We're just like, oh my gosh, I don't really want to see what's on the other side of that. But if you are willing to take a look and you're willing to see what's happening, the reasons you're putting work ahead of your life, this is where life gets interesting. This is where you start to understand and see where you can bring power back into your choices, and you can start to really get anchored into something bigger, like, what does matter to me? What are the most meaningful things in my life? Like for me, for example, I am so clear that my very top value in my life is my family and my loved ones above all else. Like, there's nothing that comes ahead of them. And does that mean that, I'm not working and like not seeing them all the time? Of course not. Like, I work, I have things going on, but I know that my top priority is them. Like, if anything happens with my husband or my dog or my parents or my family, like, that's number one. And so I am really clear on that. And so when I have that clarity, I am also able to make choices like, do I want to work or do I want to spend time with them? Like, what's the balance that I really need in my life? Like, in the evenings, I don't work so I can have quality time with my husband. These are all the things we're looking at, starting to investigate what is the most important part of your life. And I promise you, if work is number one, this is an interesting place to start to investigate. Is it number one? Is there something you're not wanting to look at elsewhere in life? Like, this is where we get to investigate and to be in curiosity. And that curiosity is going to give us some really interesting insight into what is really going on in our lives. All right, here's our final piece for our 4-day work week. we've been going through some intense stuff. Have you guys noticed yet? A 4-day work week, we're like, oh, well, I just want to work less, Nicole. Yes. And these are the questions to start to look into to really, truly work less. But here's the last piece of it. And this is my favorite piece. And you guys aren't going to be totally surprised by this one. And yet it's really important. The final piece to having a 4-day work week is actually using your intuition to guide your day. I will say this forever. The reason we are wasting our time during the days is because we are being indecisive, we are hemming and hawing, we are not clear on what's the highest priority, we're not focused. When you start to really use your intuition, and I have a lot of different episodes on this, so if you haven't looked back, go find the episodes that talk about how to use intuition to guide your day, intuition versus stress. Like listen to the intuition episodes to get a better sense of it. Because when you use intuition and you have it as your beacon, your homing signal, like the thing that is guiding you every day, you have so much more time. And it's something that I say it so much, but people don't believe me until they do it. And they're like, oh my God, Nicole, I have so much time. I'm like, I know, because you're spending all your time trying to make decisions instead of using your intuition to actually give you the answer. And then you can just say, oh, okay, that's easy. And then I just go forward. I have seen it so much from my clients. As soon as they tune into intuition, they make really big decisions quickly, whether like some people for leaving jobs, some people for staying at jobs, some people for this is what I really want next in my life. And then they just go for it. Like one of my clients recently ended a relationship and started house hunting at the same time. And it was all through her intuition. That's what's possible. We're not sitting around. We're not wondering about our choices. We are clear on our direction and then we move forward. So when you can do this now, oh my gosh, that's when we work so much more effectively. We're more productive. And I air quote productive because I'm not really into being more productive, but I am really into being effective. I'm really into being efficient and saying, okay, like, let's just get this done, move forward, move on. So those are the 4 pieces, all 4 of them pretty crucial to having a 4-day work week. These are all the pieces that are going to start to advance you into an actual 4-day work week. And I would love to know from each of you, like, what is it that you can start to do first? Can you just start to go with the identity shift? Can you change your relationship to time? Can you start to have a new relationship between work and your life, or start to develop your intuition on a deeper level? DM me at Nicole Song on Instagram. I would love to hear what you're getting from this. If this resonates with you, I also would love if you would screenshot it and share it on a story on Instagram and let me know that this one particularly hit home for you. I am so eternally grateful as ever for all of you for listening and being here in these deep conversations, because there is so much learning that's possible in life. And this particular one was just such a fun topic to go over with all of you. And don't forget, if you're an Asian American woman leader who wants the exact breakdown of a 4-day work week tailored to your life, DM me on Instagram at Nicole Song, and I have got something for you.